Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and it's been a while since I last did an episode. And that's because, as I mentioned before I went off the air, sometimes there's things that are bigger than you. And this was one of those things. I wanted to really take a step back and, do what I could as far as action steps, but also education about what's going on in our country and, racism and things like that. And, normally with my vlog, I share my creative journey. But what I sort of realized, as I kind of want to view it from this perspective today, that I've, in the past, let's say, give or take 2 weeks that I've been off the air, I've really been focused on using my creativity to help create solutions, to create ways that I can better myself, ways that I can participate in things like that, really putting my mental energy, that sort of same process that goes into my art, towards the Black Lives Matter movement. And so that's kind of how I've been viewing it. And I think that's a good use for anybody, really. I've suggested in the past, like if there's ways that you can channel your creativity into songs or whatever the case may be that can help this cause, then that's great use of your voice. And in fact, I'll kind of talk about that because I have been thinking about the long-term effects of this. I guess let me just kind of talk about it now, and then I'll get into. See, I have kind of like a hit list, if you will, of stuff that I want to talk about. That was later on, but I'll talk about it now. So, in this whole process, as kind of things were happening, I was going to protests and signing petitions and trying to educate myself and so forth. And, all that I think was beneficial. But you start to kind of look of like, okay, what is the day-to-day past this look like? Because this is, what I started quickly realizing into like, week and a half was that this is definitely not going to be a sprint. I mean, certainly, like, we haven't figured out racism in this country for 400 years. So to expect it to overnight change is unrealistic. That doesn't mean that certainly, we can't hold things accountable and don't want things to change finally. But to that effect, it's going to take certainly at least a couple of weeks. And that's very largely optimistic, let's just say. But, the point being that it's like, okay, well, I don't want this to just be a trend for me. So how do I look at it in terms of the day-to-day beyond, in the long-term effect of this? Let's say like a year down the line and things like that. And so I really thought about my own creativity and, me as a filmmaker. It's like, okay, how do I involve diverse voices as part of the characters that I create, as part of, the cast, people behind the scenes. And, the tough part for me is I'm an indie filmmaker. I mean, my cast and crew literally consisted of like, the core of it, 8 people on my first feature film. And I'm very proud that, I did have a diverse cast on it. But, you start to kind of wonder in that sense. And I think, one of the things that really, I was watching They've Gotta Have Us, which is a Netflix documentary about essentially Black Hollywood and Black movies. And it was really inspiring to watch and things like that. And it really educated me. And so it was like, okay, well, that kind of pointed me in a direction. And one of the things that, I know a lot of Black filmmakers. And so, one of the things that I did was I kind of called several people that I knew and I said, hey, listen, for what it's worth, one of the things I feel like I can deliver is if someone has an ambition, I can help make it happen. Now, I'm not, and meaning like, with my movie, the whole point of my first movie was to just make a movie. Case in point, you have a dream, no excuses, just go out and make it. Now, I can't vouch that it's the best. I can't vouch that like if maybe there was a lot more money and resources, that it wouldn't be better in that sense. But I made the movie that I wanted to make, ultimately. And so I said, for what that's worth, like, I don't want to take away from some, as I was talking to my friends, I don't want to take away from somebody's creative or artistic integrity, their vision, and so forth. But if deep down they're just like, fuck it, I really just want to make this movie or whatever project it is, then I will walk through a fucking brick wall to make it happen. That I feel like is slowly becoming a superpower of mine. And I really want to lean into that and help get people's stories made, because you look at Hollywood and certainly like there's a lot of things that need to change, in terms of who's greenlighting movies and having diverse directors, actors, and so forth. But I can put pressure on that, but I can't necessarily control it, right? What I can ultimately control is, if I know somebody, they have a vision, I'm gonna fucking go through that brick wall to make their artistic vision happen. And yeah, it might, and it's, I don't know. I don't know the right terminology as far as like how to pitch it ultimately, because yeah, like I said, I mean, my movie is far from perfect, but it's a movie that I can be proud of, and ultimately, I would hope that whoever that the people's projects that I've worked on in the past, I've elevated them. And so to me, it's almost like if the choice is between just doing it and having it be what it is versus not doing it at all ever, it's like, well, the better option is doing it. So, that's the kind of way I look at it. And so, I'm kind of thinking along in those lines, and whatever else. Going back to the idea of, the larger role, I think part of it is our ability to do inner work. As I'm kind of looking, I think there's a lot of information being shared, and I think that's wonderful. But in a way, one of the things that I'm seeing, like the sort of pushback from people to any sort of notion of advancement, is because there's like a core base where they're just they're unopen to listen, to do work on themselves, like, and things of that nature. I mean, I've talked about this in the past. All we can ultimately control is ourselves, and so from that perspective, someone can hear and see all these various things, happening, and see it with their own eyes. But the fact that, like, there are some people that can look at George Floyd and say, well, he's not a martyr. He certainly didn't have the perfect reputation before this. And it's like, okay, so you're saying that just because he wasn't a perfect person, that it justifies the way that he was murdered? And these are some of the things that I've seen. And I think there needs to be a continuation of amplifying Black voices and continuing this sort of education. But I think also at its core, I think we also need to teach the idea of like just a willingness to be open-minded. Like, I think that's because I mean, whether today it's Black voices, meaning this, right? So, like, I certainly don't know the entire history of like Black history. I certainly don't know Native American history. I don't know Asian history, to the extent, well, certainly not to call myself an expert. And granted, I would like to say that I know more than the average person, because I kind of, I know, like, in a sense, I kind of know my blind spots. And so I have, even before this, made it part of my routine to try to open myself up. I remember a year ago, I was talking with my friend Courtney Stewart, who's a producer on my movies. She was saying, or I was telling her that I feel like the only authors that I really read are white male authors. And so, I asked her for some good recommendations to kind of broaden my sense. And now I try to be very active in how I select books, and also films in general, and entertainment, really. So that way I'm not just consuming just kind of one perspective of things. I really want to broaden that perspective. And so, these were already steps that I was taking, and now they've just kind of, I'm kind of, in a sense, I don't think truncating is the word, but certainly kind of putting it all together, it's all just like, it's almost like cramming for a college test. Like right now, I'm very like, okay, I gotta read this, I gotta watch this, so like I'm just cramming it in very heavily. Versus in the past, it was kind of more incremental. But I think as far as the long-term effect, yeah, it's not just like, oh, read all this stuff now and then you're one and done. No, like, for the long-term effect of it, we have to kind of continue to make sort of learning and things like that a part of our daily routine, certainly weekly routine, because that's what's gonna make us good. Like, this isn't solved in a weekend, or even a month, even this year, right? So there has to be a kind of a continual version of this. And, they say, like, there's that old adage, if you're not learning, you're dying. And, I very heavily believe in that. And I think that's the core of all of this. We have to open ourselves up to learning in general, because we're not, like, even if in the best circumstances, everything that we learned in school, if like it was as comprehensive as it could have been, there's always more to learn, right? The world is so dynamic, especially in today's day and age. And so we have to just kind of be open to that. And, that's something that certainly I've talked about. And if you're listening to this now, I think, you adhere to, and one of the things is like, how, as far as like the people that really need to hear it, where I'm not just like preaching to the choir, and neither are you. I think that what I'm finding is you can't shame people into things. I think I think I've been most successful when I showcase it, right? So when I just set by example, and in that sense, like, and draw people in and try to engage them and not shame them. So a perfect example, I'm seeing a lot more of my white friends kind of just get back to business as normal on social media. And it was truthfully pissing me off, and it's like, well, just because they're posting, they're now what would be termed like normal day-to-day stuff again, versus the Black Lives Matter movement, does that truly mean that they don't care, right? Because that in itself could be an assumption. So, I don't know that to be true, right? So, and rather than like attack them, like, hey, you're not posting X, Y, and Z anymore, and like, what the hell's wrong with you? It's like, okay, you know what? Let me get off my high horse, and instead let me engage them. So, one of my friends recommended something really honest and really wonderful. She said, hey, what she's been doing is kind of just checking in with people and saying, hey, as this kind of continues, I wanted to see what steps you're taking to continue educating yourself and the action steps, because I might benefit from learning them too, and then offering what the things that you're doing. So in that sense, you're not being assumptive about anything. You're engaging them and offering them the opportunity to kind of respond and say, oh, well, here's kind of perhaps something, and maybe through their own eyes they have done enough. But I think continuing to hold each other accountable, but not in a mean-spirited, shameful way. I think that's the way change ultimately happens in the long term, because there's a lot of emotion going on, a lot of divisive. I don't know if the word is divisiveness or decisiveness. Divisiveness is happening, and that's ultimately not going to benefit anybody if just people are just butting heads. So the more you can kind of engage people, the better. And one of the things when people, like, someone sent me Candace Owens' video, and they were like, "Hey, watch this," and what are your thoughts? And so I watched it. One of the things, like, I try to see, I try to understand the opposite side as much as I can, or certainly take in as many perspectives as I can, because even within, like, let's say the Black Lives Matter movement, there's people, I think there's differing opinions here and there, on some of the smaller stuff, and so I always try to just be as broad as I can, and try to really get to the source and hear it firsthand. So I was like, okay, let me check out this video by Candice, and so rather than just kind of denounce it, I did offer up my thoughts and things like that. And I think in a lot of ways, again, it goes back to that openness and willingness. Like, by engaging with that video, it would force me to make my arguments that much stronger, right? And in the case of that video, it didn't change my opinion, but there have been certainly other things in the past that I've watched or read that have gotten me to change my opinion. I think, again, that goes back to the idea of education and so forth. Like, the ability to change our minds, that's a wonderful thing, and we need to embrace that more. So I think that's something that we need to really kind of do. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was this notion. I've been trying to go to a lot more of the smaller protests, simply because, and when I say smaller, so there's one in Woodland Hills that's been kind of happening pretty much every day. I haven't been every single day, but I try to as many times during the week as I can. And on like a good day, we have like 100 people, and then on average days, like during the weekdays, there's like, if we have 10, that's a lot. And one of the reasons I like, listen, if you go to the big ones, like, I'm not discrediting you. Like, obviously there's multiple ways of protesting, and certainly there's multiple ways of helping the Black Lives Matter movement. But I think, in a sense, like, for me, one of the benefits of going to the smaller ones is because they are a lot more intimate, so I can end up actually engaging and learning in the process. So I think that's been very beneficial for me, and I do think it kind of sends them, to the. So we on the corner that we do it, there's a lot of cars and things like that, and I think, in a large sense, it's like the reaction I'm seeing from people is like, wow, these people really care. Like, even if there's like 5 of them, they're not going to stop. They really care about this, and so this must truly be important. It's one thing when you see that thousands of people, like, that sends a message too. But I think there's an equally powerful message of, like, just seeing 5 people just be like, no, this is important to us, and we're going to stand out here for hours on end in LA heat of no other things, So, so yeah, but I certainly, I did go to this Sunday's the All Black Lives Matter protest, the one that was like the big one, was originally supposed to be like the Pride Parade, but they said, like, hey, we're we need to come together, and this is about Black Lives Matter, so we're gonna focus on that. And so that was the primary focus, and it was a wonderful protest. I think I've read like 30,000 people attended. So yeah, it was truly wonderful. So and I think if you haven't been to a protest, I think there's something really beneficial to just being there firsthand that you kind of gain, and it's in many ways it's indescribable. It has affected me in ways that I'm still processing through, in the best of ways. But as I said, that don't think that's the only way. There are donations, educating yourself, talking with your friends and family, signing petitions, calling your representatives. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg type stuff that can be done. So yeah, that's kind of, as far as the long and short of it, in terms of what I've been kind of thinking and going through. And yeah, that's what I got. It's as honest as I can be. It's probably definitely not very articulate and things like that, but I think it's nonetheless, as I said, I think if anything, it's important for people to see people doing it, and because I've certainly by seeing other people step forward that are like me, it certainly encouraged me to do better and be better. And so if this, for lack of a better term, if this is some sort of permission slip that you need to go out and be an advocate, then by all means you have my permission. And like me, you're not going to get it 100% correct every single time. But if you do come from that place of truly wanting to help, and your aim is to help, and you're as honest as you can be, then I think that will that will resonate far more than any minor hiccup you'll experience. So anyway, that's what I have for you. Just a quick shout out to my friend Khalil. He, speaking of amplifying Black voices, he has a series called Black Spider-Man that you can check out on YouTube. He did a series with Revolt, and basically, if you just go to if you type in Camp KAMPP on YouTube, you can get to his YouTube channel, and there's amazing work there. So I encourage you to check it out because he's a dear friend of mine. He does amazing work, and he's certainly going to be a filmmaker that I continue to want to work with for the rest of my life, really. Anyway, so that's what I have for you. That's what I got. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. I appreciate you. Bye.